Hello and welcome to another edition of Superhero Movie Review Time. I'm your host Grant Liston, a very, very bored Englishman. So this week, X-Men Days of Future Past. This film's split opinion right down the middle. Some people feel that it's a high-end explosive action thrill ride. Others, however, feel that it's a complete fucking train wreck. I'm more in the middle on this one. I really did enjoy the action, but there were certain things about it I was very upset with and very, very confused by. So, this is my review of X-Men Days of Future Past. After the opening credits scene, we get to see what's left of Moscow and the rest of the X-Men team. Who's in this X-Men team, you ask? Well, I'll let you know. We start off with Colossus, who we remember from Last Stand, Kitty Pryde, who we remember from Last Stand, and Bobby Iceman, who was from the original X-Men trilogy. Three very familiar faces. Excellent start. And they're joined by a mutant called Blink, who's got a very, very cool power in she can make portals and teleport people into several different locations. Very, very useful power for a quick escape. She is joined by a character called Bishop. Now, I recognise Bishop from the PS2 game X-Men Legends 2. However, this is not what I was expecting when I saw Bishop was going to be in this movie. It didn't look anything like I expected him to, and I thought I knew his backstory and powers through the game, and yet, after watching this film, it's clear I have no fucking idea what this guy does at all. From the game, I gathered that he was a time-travelling mutant cop of some sort who had, how do I describe it, basically an energy beam fist that he could fire at people, and he was proficient in firearms. Yet, in this film, okay, he's got a firearm, but it seems that his powers derive from people using their powers on him. He absorbs the energy, not unlike Sebastian Shaw from First Class. He then loads the other mutant's powers into his gun and starts firing away like a madman. Okay. Pretty underwhelming when you think about it. They're joined by a mutant who can turn his entire body into a fire pit, and he can fly around and shoot fire out of his fingertips. And yet it's not Johnny Storm. It's not even Pyro, who's mega evolved into something else. This character is called Sunspot. I haven't got the foggiest who this guy is. I've heard some people say he's a descendant from Johnny Storm. I've also had arguments with people where they're saying to me he should have been Japanese, and I keep saying that's Sunfire, different mutant, same powers basically. Probably should have just put Pyro in this film, or if they're gonna, branch out, bring the Fantastic Four into the storyline. It makes sense, and it'd be pretty cool to, have certain characters from certain films bond as one. We all know what I'm talking about. They've done it several times. And to round out the team, they have Warpath. As far as I can tell, with this Warpath character, is that hang on, he's a lookout. Of all the great mutants that could have been in this film, and all the great mutants that could have survived a Sentinel attack, you have Warpath, who is a glorified lookout, who's got some severe depression issues and abandonment issues with some war paint going on. Oh my. We still haven't even got a decent Gambit on screen, yet they've given us Warpath. So now we get our first proper look at the enemy, the Sentinels, and now, if you've ever seen Thor, this is what I took when I first saw these Sentinels, because I was expecting massive, almost like Transformer Optimus Prime looking guy that's purple, and yet we got the Destroyer from Thor. We got his gay brother. That very, very slender and good looking, very, very stylish, but not quite what I was expecting. So the Sentinels go to work and start taking out the X-Men. They start off by Jesus Christ, they rip off Colossus's arm and then they punch his skull into the ground, leaving a dent. That's pretty fucking hardcore right there. We now see Bobby Iceman finally using the ice slide to really good effect, but then the Sentinel breaks out of the frozen ice cube he's in, grabs Bobby by the throat, and then melts his face until his head falls off. He's decapitated him by melting, and then just to add insult to injury, he then steps on his head, crushing all the pieces everywhere. I am sitting in the cinema, like, jaw hanging off the floor here, just like, what? I'm already over the fact they look like, the Destroyer's gay brother. These guys are fucking awesome so far. And then we get Warpath. Sorry. Then we get Warpath, who then tries to hold three of them off with his machete. They could have had Nightcrawler, they could have had Gambit, they could have even had another crack at Angel, and they gave us Warpath. After Warpath is easily dispatched, we now come across the last two in Kitty and Bishop. And Kitty uses her powers to send Bishop back in time to warn the others when the Sentinels will attack. Hang on a minute. Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat, can phase through walls. When the fuck did she learn how to send people back in time? Massive, massive problem with this film already. That is not her power. From the beginning of the cast list, I saw Blink, who can make portals, and a time-travelling mutant cop in Bishop. If anyone's getting sent back in time, it's Bishop. So the rest of the X-Men rematerialise in an alternate timeline because of the successful going back in time. They now respawn somewhere else, basically. That's the gist of it I got. They're now joined by Professor X, Magneto, Storm, and Wolverine, played by Sir Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Halle Berry, and Hugh Jackman. Oh, such a lineup, you gotta love it. So they all meet up together. It's clear they haven't seen each other in quite some time. Everyone's geared up different. Professor X has got a brand new hover wheelchair, which looks pretty bitchin', and they then discuss what's happening. I know it's mainly for our benefit to know what's going on in the story, but this Sentinel problem kind of looks like it's been going on for at least 3, 5, 7 years maybe. It's been going on for a certain amount of time because everyone's very battle hardened, and yet now they're just discussing how the Sentinels came about. Yeah, another problem, another big hole in this film of mine. But they progress and talk about a man named Boulevard Trask, who's played by Peter Dinklage. Wait, hang on, Boulevard Trask. Now, I'm not going to sit here and dig too much of a plot hole here, but this was Boulevard Trask from The Last Stand, and this is Boulevard Trask in Days of Future Past. Now, instead of talking about the obvious problem here, I'm going to offer a certain theory. I hope you enjoy it. I'd like to think that somewhere in the X-Men universe, something happened. Let's take Wolverine's adamantium skeleton. Let's say, in one timeline, he didn't get the skeleton. Okay? And that made a ripple effect and a butterfly effect. And we get Boulevard Trask's mum at a party, and she's hammered. She's absolutely pissed as arseholes. And she makes a choice. Does she sleep with Warwick Davis or Shaquille O'Neal? And judging on what Wolverine's choice was affected her choice later on in life. You're welcome. So anyway, Boulevard Trask is the man who created the Sentinels, or thought up the idea of it, whatever one you were going to go with. And it turns out that he used Mystique's DNA to create a weapon that adapts to its enemies. The theory's good, but I'm calling bullshit right now. This is 110% nothing more than we've got Jennifer Lawrence on our playbook. We want all the fans from the Hunger Games to watch our X-Men movie. We're going to give Mystique a really, really unnecessarily big storyline in this film. Don't get me wrong, I like Jennifer Lawrence. Very, very pretty. And not a bad actress, you know. She's done some fantastic work over the years. But Mystique really isn't this big of a character. Everything she did in the previous films, I'd say, was nowhere near below par. She was almost on par. She could have done one or two things more action-y, but her espionage, her humour, her gymnastic skills were perfect. And yet all of a sudden we've now got this renegade superhero. That's not who Mystique is, in my opinion. So the team come up with a plan to send somebody back in time to the 70s when they can stop Mystique from killing Boulevard Trask. Who do they send? The obvious choice being Bishop for me, because he's a time-travelling cop. However, they decide to go for Professor X. Kitty turns around and says, look, you've got the most powerful mind in the world. I think I'd kill you if I tried sending you back that far. I could probably do a couple of weeks. Wolverine pipes up with, well, hang on, I can't die. Do you want to give me a crack? So we're going to have a Wolverine film on our hands, people. So they send Wolverine back to the 70s. And we get this really funny scene where he wakes up in a bloody waterbed and there's a lava lamp, and I'm just waiting to see some LSD scattered around everywhere, if I'm honest. So we got a lot of 70s going on here. Three men then walk in and say, you shouldn't be sleeping with the boss's daughter. At this point Wolverine's like, oh yeah, there's a girl in the bed as well. Right, guys, I don't want any trouble. And the guys all put out their guns and we get a bit of Wolverine action. But he's got himself some bone claws this time round. No adamantium skeletons in him just yet. So Wolverine takes one of the mobsters' cars and heads over to the X-Mansion to find Professor X. What he finds, though, is a young, gawky-looking teenager, Hank McCoy. Hold on. Fuck off a minute. At the end of X-Men First Class, we saw Hank turn into Beast. Fact. His experiment went wrong and he turned into Beast. No matter how you look at it, he was blue and furry. We've now got Nicholas Hoult standing here looking tall and gawky again. What is going on? So Wolverine barges in and says, look, we're going to be friends one day, punches him in the face, you just don't know it yet. Yeah, very good joke and that. But then he does something very unforgivable. This film has already lost some of my respect for this one thing. Hank then gets angry and then starts turning blue. Now, for the life of me, it looks familiar. A comic book character getting angry and then turning into a monster of a different colour. I can't put my finger on it. I really can't put my finger on it, but it reminds me of something. And I'm drawing a blank here, guys. I'm drawing a real blank. So, in Beast's blue form, he and Wolverine then start having the fight they should have had in Last Stand. And yeah, I admit, it's pretty funny. And then we see Professor X walk down the stairs. Fuck off a minute! Professor X walks down the stairs. At the end of X-Men First Class, Professor X was shot in the back and ended up in a wheelchair. This is fact. We have seen this. You cannot dispute this thing that happened. And yet he's walking. So we've got an unfurry Beast and a non-crippled Professor X. It seems that whatever Matthew Vaughn did in X-Men First Class, Bryan Singer's gone, I didn't like that, I'm changing it back. They add in this flimsy excuse that Beast perfected his cosmetic cure, so they're still mutants, but the cure basically gives them a makeover so they don't look like a horrible disfigured beast, or they don't be crippled anymore. And I'm sitting there going, wrong. Very wrong. I do not like this. I don't care if this is my opinion. I'm making this very, very clear. This is fucking shit. So Logan then explains to Professor X, you sent me from the future to come back here and talk to you. We need to free Magneto, we need to find Mystique, we need to stop all this shit from happening or everyone's going to die. And Professor X replies, you can fuck off. Very pleasant from James McAvoy right there. So after about 45 seconds of soul searching, with the commentary from Beast saying that the cure basically gets rid of Charles's ability to read minds and freeze time and whatnot, but gives him the use of his legs, basically turning, Charles Xavier into a junkie. I like the theory, I like the character change, I'm just not buying it still. But still, Charles Xavier comes to and says, fine, I'll help you free Magneto and I'll help you find Mystique. Do you know where he is? Wolverine's like, yeah, he's in prison, gotta break him out. And Charles goes, do you know why he's in prison? It turns out that Magneto has assassinated the President JFK. Okay, so it turns out that not everything Matthew Vaughn did that Bryan Singer didn't like. He took something that happened in real life and wrapped the X-Men universe around it. I really like this because in my school days I was obsessed with the JFK assassination. I love a good conspiracy theory. So it was really, really nice to see a new theory come about, because up until then my favourite theory was the Red Dwarf theory, that they took JFK from the future, brought him back in time to shoot himself to drive us all crazy. So it was great to see a new theory of Magneto curved the bullet to kill him. Top marks, I like that. We now go to our other main character, Mystique, played once again by Jennifer Lawrence, and she is posing as an army general in Vietnam. She goes into the quarantine section where the military are keeping their mutants that are in the military. And oh look, hey look, there's Havoc again. I remember him from First Class. A thought then occurs to me. Where the hell is everyone else? Where's Banshee? Where's Azazel? Where's Angel Salvatore? Where's that other guy? That Riptide, yeah. I mean, he's a quiet fella, but he could be around somewhere. Mystique then breaks the guys out of prison and gets them all on the plane. And before the plane takes off, Havoc looks at Mystique and says, "You're not coming with us?" And she's like, no, my war isn't over yet. I'm going to stay here and continue my work. And Havoc's like, okay, yeah, sure. Here's another problem. The next time you see Mystique is in America. So surely it'd make a lot of sense if she jumped on the plane and fucked off with them. But she decides to stay in Vietnam for reasons we never hear or see of. So we go back to Logan and his plan to break Magneto out of prison, and he decides to, instead of going all out assault, he decides to recruit a mutant he knows who, at this day and age, is going to be quite young. They discover a young Quicksilver. Now, I don't know how true this is, but there was a lot of rumours going around saying that this was originally meant to be the Juggernaut, and that the only reason that Fox decided to put Quicksilver in their film was because the Avengers were putting Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in their film. So they had a huge hissy fit saying, oh, you can't use Quicksilver, and if you do, like, you can't say he's a mutant, he's just a guy who got powers through this, that and the other. And I'm like, Sony, just give up. Just, you, Sony, Fox, all of you guys, just give up your rights to any Marvel stuff, sell them to Marvel, keep a 10% profit for any films they make off of these guys, because you're not going to beat them. If you're not going to beat them, you might as well join them. So now we get this absolutely brilliant scene-stealing moment from Quicksilver. We finally get the moment where Charles Xavier and Magneto meet up again, and there's a real heated animosity between them, and they're surrounded by coppers. Just as the policemen are about to shoot and kill them all, the whole place starts to freeze. And you just see Quicksilver in the background adjust his goggles and put on Time in a Bottle on his headset, and does possibly one of the best things in an X-Men movie ever. And in this absolutely fantastic slow motion scene, he starts going around the entire room and doing all these hijinks, like he gives a guard a wedgie, he forces a guy to punch himself in the face, he then starts eating soup out of a bowl. It's really, really funny stuff. I can't do enough credit here just talking about it. You'll have to actually sit there and watch the film itself, because it is absolutely brilliant. One of those you had to be there moments, I think. The story now takes us over to France, because in 1973 the war in Vietnam is now over and they're having this peace treaty in France. Reasons, I guess. I think they just wanted to use more locations. And in one of the conference rooms we see Bolivar Trask and another William Stryker, and holy crap, is that Sean William Scott? That is a dead ringer for Sean William Scott, I ain't lying. So Trask is pitching the Sentinel idea to the committee, and he starts showing off his new toy, saying this here will be implanted in all my Sentinels and it can tell the difference between humans and mutants. This thing will not bleep. And it bleeps. So he goes, so there's a mutant in here, until Trask finally comes across one of the Vietnam generals, and it turns out it's Mystique in disguise who's there to kill Trask. So she clears out the entire room, knocks down Stryker, and is about to shoot Trask. At that point, you see Beast, Logan, Magneto and Charles burst in the room, and Mystique is tasered by Stryker. Magneto then takes it upon himself to try and kill Mystique, because in his mind, quite simply, if Mystique dies, they then can't use her DNA to make these Sentinels. It makes sense. So he tries to kill her. She jumps out the window to escape, and Magneto follows in suit while stealing the Sentinel plans as he goes, and Charles sends Beast after Magneto to stop him. Now, this made me giggle because from what I know of Beast, and I know quite a lot about Beast, he's one of my favourite characters, he's a pacifist. He doesn't do a lot of violence, only when needed to or goaded into doing it in self-defence. Yet his first reaction here is to grab Magneto by the scruff of his neck and take him over to the fountain and try and drown him. I'm like, Beast, you're a pacifist, for fuck's sake, what are you doing? During all the commotion, Trask actually escapes all their clutches and ends up going straight to the President to say to him, look, you have no countermeasures for these mutants. I do. It's called the Sentinel Program. And once again pitches the program to the President. And the guy they got playing, President Nixon, is an absolute dead ringer from voice to look. I tell you what, whoever did the casting decisions in this film deserves a fucking gold medal for that one. That is brilliant. The film now kind of comes to a bit of a, not a standstill, but definitely starts waddling through some of the storyline here, because we get this whole inspirational, Charles is no longer going to use the serum for his legs, he then reverts back to the wheelchair, and it kind of loses a lot of pace at this point. He tries to use Cerebro again and realises he's still not quite strong enough, so Logan says to him, look, we've got no more time for this bullshit, read my mind, look to our future, because if you don't stop this, shit's going to go down, we are all going to die. And then we get an absolutely brilliant scene, one of my favourites of this entire film. James McAvoy reaches into Logan's mind and reads it, and fast forwards all the way to the future, and he comes face to face with Patrick Stewart. So now we get Charles Xavier meets Charles Xavier, and the talk they have between them, you can tell the pair of them had so much fun filming this. The speech itself is not very long-winded at all, it's just the right amount of pep talk you need, but the thing I really, really wanted to see, and I have no idea how they would have done it, but it would have been fantastic to see, is Michael Fassbender talking to Sir Ian McKellen in their own little scene, where Fassbender's like, well, how haven't we taken over the world already yet? We've got the tools to do so, and Sir Ian McKellen could be like, you're still young, you've still got all this rage inside you, at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. And that could have gone so many different ways. He could have taken some of that knowledge and gone forward. He could have ignored it completely, like, you're an old man, you don't know nothing about me, and it could have, it would have been such a great scene to see, but unfortunately we didn't get it. Speaking of Magneto, the story now takes us back to him, and he's going through the plans of the Sentinels, and he finds out where they're going or what they're being used for. So he intercepts the shipment. So he stands on top of this moving train, pulls up all these rail yards lines, and forces them into the Sentinels. So now basically they've got 8 Sentinels here, all of them at a moment's notice ready to do Magneto's bidding. You can see why I love this character, can't you? He is so methodical in everything he does, and just an absolute pleasure to watch. And just to top it off, okay, this scene I'm completely divided on, because on one hand it's amazing, it's so cool to watch, it's Magneto in a nutshell. However, even for a fantasy film, it didn't go well with me. It was a bit too unrealistic, because Magneto then goes over to another government facility and takes out 3 guards with the classic ball bearings. Fucking love this guy. And then opens up the safe door and retrieves his much needed helmet. Here's my problem. 3 guards that were guarding his helmet and didn't cause any alarms to go off. He went through the entire place completely unchallenged. I'm calling bullshit. Sorry. So the film now takes us to our climactic ending. We get 3 parts of the story where we've got Charles and Logan trying to stop Mystique from assassinating Trask, Magneto there to make a real statement, and in the future the Sentinels are just about to attack and Wolverine is still unconscious. We're going to start with Magneto's storyline, because once again we're talking the submarine on the beach, the plastic prison escape, the Golden Gate Bridge. Once again he trumps it. He stands in the middle of a baseball field and just wrenches the entire thing out of its foundation and flies it over to the White House, where he promptly plonks it down in front of the White House, that's surrounding the entire area, and you just sit there in absolute awe of, wow, just amazing. Every time I see it, I'm a sucker for Magneto. I truly am. It doesn't matter if it's Sir Ian McKellen or Michael Fassbender. The pair of them are just incredible to watch. The visuals, the dialogue, the way they hold themselves on screen, it's just such a pleasure to watch. Truly. The story now takes us to the future, and the Sentinels are attacking, so Magneto takes it upon himself to take charge of the situation. He then picks up the X-Jet and throws it at the oncoming horde of Sentinels, and it blows up 2 or 3 of the carriages. You're like, alright, pretty fucking badass right there, I'm liking it. We then get Bishop, who's completely juiced up by Storm's electricity. He charges it into his gun, and then starts firing away like a madman, taking out 2, maybe 3 of them. At least he's trying, I guess. But then we get this really cool scene from Storm where she opens up the heavens and throws lightning at the Sentinels, blowing at one of the carrier vessels. And then she dies. Yep, we get this absolutely brilliant scene from Storm. She's like taking charge of the situation just like Magneto has. She flies down, she's like, is everybody okay? Yeah, good hustle team. And I'm like, there's a fucking army out there, damn it. And one of the Sentinels climbs up the wall and stabs her through the chest, takes her corpse and just throws it over like dropping litter. All I'm going to say about Halle Berry is that she's an amazing actress and a fantastic sport for carrying on as Storm for these 4 films, because she's been completely underused every time, and either the paycheck is too good to turn down, or she just likes playing the smaller roles and just likes hanging around Hugh Jackman. I mean, the guy seems nice enough, so I wouldn't blame her for that. Anyway, as Storm drops, the rest of the X-Men then start taking heavy losses, and Bishop is completely gang raped by 3 of them, all of them opening up their faces and using their Destroyer from Thor beam on him. I'm not even going to lie, it is almost a carbon copy. And they completely disintegrate Bishop. Magneto then does the smart thing by completely barricading the door they're holding Charles, Shadowcat and Logan in by taking the rubble off the X-Jet and making a complete archway so there's no one can get through. And he puts himself on the other side of that as well, so he's kept himself safe as well. Good smart thinking there from Magneto. We didn't get a cool bit of tag team action here with Colossus and Blink. Blink opens up a portal 500 feet in the sky and he drops like a stone and he just keeps going and going, 500 feet, power punch, boom! And it does literally fuck all. And the Sentinel just jumps back up again like nothing had happened. We now go back to the past, back in 1973. And this bit really, really pissed me off. Beast turns to Logan and says, I know I shouldn't ask this, but in the future, do I make it? And Logan, without even hesitating, is like, nah. So Beast is like, okay, I'm going to change it. And I'm just going to say, he turns into the Incredible Hulk. He rips off his glasses and goes, ah! And honestly, I swear to God, I think he was this close from saying, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. So Beast jumps on the back of one of the Sentinels and starts trying to pull the cables out, and the Sentinel then throws him into a cop car. And Beast gets a great idea. He's got some serum left over. So he takes out the needles and jams it into his leg, and suddenly all the fur starts melting away, and he's, oh, it's Nicholas Hoult again. And the Sentinel's like, oh, I'll leave you to it then, mate, and walks off. I'm sorry, what? What just happened? My brain, it hurts. What? Right. You're telling me that a simple cosmetic needle that is meant to suppress your powers so you don't look like a beast, or gives Professor X his legs and disables his mind-reading abilities, you're telling me that's good enough to disguise yourself from a Sentinel? At the start of this film, this exact film, they told us that first of all the Sentinels were hunting mutants. Then the Sentinels got smarter and started taking out humans who had the possibility of creating mutants. They could almost see into the future or just process DNA like that. So you're telling me that a simple cosmetic that for the visual eye only changes your appearance, you're telling me enough of that can trick a Sentinel who can tell that you might have mutant children or grandchildren in a couple of years' time? Bollocks. Absolute bollocks right there. You should have just fucking killed off Beast for all I care, because that right there made no sense to me. But anyway, here we go. We've now got a non-metallic Wolverine versus Magneto. I've been waiting for a Magneto Wolverine scene for so long now, and I'm like, here we go. Oh, it's going to be amazing. It wasn't amazing, but it was still very, very brutal. And I like the brutality, yet it was very, very short and swift. Magneto just gets these metal poles and impales Wolverine several hundred times, and you can see the pain, and Hugh Jackman really puts on a damn good performance here. Yeah, it's just too short for my liking. It literally, he impales him with all these metal poles, lifts Logan up in the air, and then throws him into fucking next week. And I'm a bit like, it was good, but I wanted more. I wanted to see a real tussle. I want to see a real fucking action sequence between the two. But I suppose we'll have to get what we're given on that one. We now get this back and forth between the past and the future. And in the future, we've got the X-Men dropping like flies. We get Colossus completely ripped into two pieces. You've got two Sentinels. One's got the legs, one's got the arms. 3 tugs, and boom, he's in half. And you're like, damn. I thought earlier when they ripped his arm off was bad enough, but they just ripped him in half. And they'd forgotten about him by the time he'd hit the floor. Very fucking brutal. We then see Blink getting stabbed 3 or 4 times by the Sentinels in an almost anticlimactic, oh, there goes Blink as well. You know, I'll tell you what, at least Sunspot put up a bit of a fight, you know, when he was fighting off the Sentinels. You know, he's blasting fire here and there. He then loses an arm as well, and then keeps on fighting, and then one of them gets, like, Lady Deathstrike claws and impales him. And it's like, okay, yeah, that guy went down pretty damn fighting. And then we get, well... and then we get Warpath. Oh, they roast his face like a barbecue. It gets better. It gets better. I IMDb'd it. The actor's name is Boo Boo Stewart. Warpath got a boo boo. I mean, come on. Of all the mutants, there's thousands, hundreds and thousands, and they went with Warpath. So yeah, while all this is going on, Magneto's giving his speeches again to all the cameras, and he's once again recruiting yet another brotherhood. The closest he's come to having an actual proper brotherhood was in X-Men and X-Men First Class, where he had Toad, Sabretooth and Mystique, and then the other one he had Azazel, Riptide, Emma Frost and Angel. It was a good starting point. And yet, what happened in both of them? All these mutants just get completely offed and forgotten about, and you're supposed to just keep going with that. And yet, in his speech in Days of Future Past, you see people like Toad and Ink listening to his speech like, yeah, I'm going to join this guy. Guarantee you'll never see these fuckers ever again. And yet, the only member of the Brotherhood that sticks with him for all these films is Mystique. And even in this one, she's trying to kill him. So, stop dick-teasing us with Brotherhood promises. Either stop mentioning it, or bring us the fucking Brotherhood. It's ridiculous. We now finally come to the gradual stop of this film, where President Nixon gets up and says to Magneto, don't kill anyone, just kill me. But in reality, it's just Mystique disguising herself. And while Magneto is distracted by a huge Sentinel crashing around the corner, Mystique pulls out a gun and shoots him through the neck. And I'm like, ooh, ouch, that sucks. And then Charles has this like mental communication with Mystique saying like, don't be a dickhead. I mean, don't be a bad guy, just show you're the better person. You don't have to kill them. You know, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Yeah, I'm telling you what to do. And there's only so many of these speeches you can take in a single film. I think we're on number 6 right now. And that's not just from Patrick Stewart or James McAvoy. Logan gives his fair share as well. In the end, Mystique decides she's not going to kill him, and she then hands over Magneto to Charles Xavier, and then Charles Xavier just lets him leave. And you're like, why did you make a big show and dance of handing him over then? You know, you didn't need to. If Charles was just going to let him go anyway. Reasons, I guess. Anyway, we now finally get to the final end of the film, I guess, where Wolverine wakes up in the not too distant future, and everything seems to be normal. He goes downstairs and sees Hank and Storm are still teaching. He also finds that Kitty and Colossus are still teaching as well. And then he sees, at the corner of his eye, it's Jean Grey. Jean Grey is alive. The Phoenix is still alive. I'm a bit shocked at this point. You know, they've actually brought Jean back for these films. Oh god, then they brought back Cyclops as well. I just got over that. Hang on a minute. That means... It means The Last Stand never happened. Woo-hoo! Of all the things this film has done that's made me go, this is awesome, the fact that they've eradicated The Last Stand is possibly the best thing has ever happened. Although it does put into perspective that I've done a half-hour review on it. Yeah, didn't think of that, did I? So now we get the big question at the end. What happened to Wolverine? Because last time we saw him in 1973, Magneto had thrown him out of the stadium and he drowned. Obviously he can't die, so what happened to him? We get the Sean William Scott guy who's playing Stryker fish him out of the water, and I'm thinking, this is brilliant, this makes a lot of sense. This is now a whole new way of giving us Wolverine's backstory of how he signed up for Weapon X and got the adamantium skeleton, how he lost his mind. There could be a whole new thing. We can forget about Wolverine Origins and Wolverine 2 now, because this whole new path takes us into a new direction. They then decide to ruin this by completely fucking things up and then showing us that Stryker's got yellow eyes, and it's like, oh, that's Mystique. That little nugget of, oh, what's Mystique doing now, has no payoff. It resolves into nothing. It's never mentioned or spoke of or even brought up in idle conversation between friends. It is nothing now. This whole thing where Mystique was posing as Stryker meant nothing. And that's where the film leaves us. We now get our after credits scene where it's a very, very powerful mutant in Egypt moving his hands about a bit and creating the pyramids. And if you look over his shoulder in the background, you see 4 horsemen. So it hints very heavily that the next film is going to be based on Apocalypse. So that was X-Men Days of Future Past. And I can see what people mean now. This film really did divide opinion, because I love the action sequences and I loved how some of the X-Men were being killed off in the future. Like, there was some real brutality there. And it was so good to see two lots of Professor X and Magneto, you know, young and old. It was fantastic. Yet some of the decisions being made for this film, like lack of Quicksilver, the pointless of the cure serum that Beast has, it's completely unnecessary. So I'm going to give this film a 6 out of 10. I got to say, I did like it, but it could have been a lot more informative. There's so many things they left off. I mean, for example, now I've got to hold my hands up here, I have not actually seen the Rogue cut of this film, and maybe I should get around to doing that. However, when I want to watch a film, I want to see the whole film in its entirety. I don't want to have to keep buying add-ons like X-Men 1.5 or like the Blu-ray edition of Suicide Squad just to see if the Joker was actually in the film or not. I want to see a film that's going to give me everything I need. And this film didn't live up to that at times. I mean, there was so much emphasis that Anna Paquin was returning as Rogue, and the copy I've got upstairs, she's in it for 5 seconds at the very end. Yet there's this whole Rogue cut where she's got a part in it, maybe. I don't even know if it's like a cameo or if it's like a full-on main character scene. So thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and obviously leave a dirty comment. And I'll see you all next time for X-Men Apocalypse. Take care now.